Hello, I'm Paul Kazee, and we are the members of Subway Cinema.
I'm Grady Hendrix. I am also in Subway Cinema.
And I'm Goran Topalovic. Unfortunately, I'm also in Subway Cinema.
Subway started three of us and a bunch of other guys. We were hanging around watching movies in Chinatown, and the theaters were closing one by one, and the last one was the Music Palace. And we got together and said, guys, somebody's got to save this theater. We can't let this theater die. We saw the sign go up for sale. We contacted a few cultural organizations. Nobody was interested. So we decided that we would just go ahead and put on movies ourselves. Of course, by the time we all had to write a check for $1,000 each, our numbers dwindled down to 5 people. So the 5 of us started it, did our first event in 2000 at the Anthology Film Archives, and ended up doing 2 more events that same year, including the very first Old School Kung Fu Fest.
And really the whole point of doing Old School Kung Fu Fest was to kind of capture that spirit of 42nd Street, Grindhouse theaters, showing double features of martial arts films, right? It all kind of started with 5 Fingers of Death. And the focus this year is on Taiwanese wuxia. So what is wuxia? It's a Chinese word that really does not have an equivalent in English, so it's not easy to translate. But probably the closest we could get to is, these are stories of heroic swordsmen and swordswomen. This cinematic genre of wuxia has been the oldest in Chinese language cinema. It really started in 1920s in Shanghai. There's also a literary tradition of wuxia which goes back hundreds of years, and very often the films themselves will be based on some of those original stories. After Shanghai, after the World War II, kind of the industry shifted to Hong Kong, and there was a kind of renaissance or new school wuxia cinema that was launched by Shaw Brothers. And there was Chang Che, One-Armed Swordsman, and King Hu with Come Drink With Me. King Hu didn't have the best of experience working with Shaw Brothers, so he decided to go to Taiwan. And he was invited by a Union Film, which was a Taiwanese-based independent film company. And his next film was Dragon Inn, which was a big box office hit and really started the trend of Taiwanese wuxia films. We wanted to put a spotlight specifically on Taiwanese wuxia because they're not as well known outside of Taiwan, and a lot of the martial arts movie fans they're kind of more familiar with the Hong Kong cinema. They think the Hong Kong movies were kind of dominating, but Taiwanese films were just as good at that time, and they were popular all throughout Southeast Asia.
All 3 of us really started out with our love coming from Hong Kong movies. That was originally what we first loved.
Yes.
But we felt like it was really time to put a lot more focus on Taiwan because there was so much back and forth between those 2 industries. Taiwan was a huge talent pool for Hong Kong filmmaking, and it had its own film studios, it had its own production crews, and a lot of really famous directors, actors, Angela Mao, most of the 5 Venoms, I think, King Hu, all came from Taiwan, and people often lump them in with Hong Kong, but it really has its own identity. So there's 3 movies we're doing streaming because not everyone can make it to the theater. The oldest of the bunch, or the most mature, is from 1959, which is The Daring Gang of 19 from Verdun City, which, the catchy title. And it's a black and white wuxia movie. This is before the big revolution that King Hu and Chang Che brought about in the late 60s. It's one of the sort of old school wuxia, but the real thing that makes it important is it features an actress named Josephine Su Fengfeng when she's 12 years old. And Su Fengfeng became one of the biggest movie stars in Hong Kong. Before the sort of wuxia revolution, most of the major movie stars in Hong Kong were women. And Connie Chan and Su Fengfeng as teenagers and young adults were 2 of the biggest, and their fan clubs would actually rumble in the streets like street gangs over who was the better actor. And often they'd appear in wuxia movies together where either Su Fengfeng or Connie Chan, one of them would play the male hero and drag, and the other would be sort of the one she's courting and the heroine. But Daring Gang of 19 from Verdun City, she's 12 years old in this. It's the first action movie I think she ever made. It's not her first movie, but it's her first action movie.
And she's so charming.
Yeah, she's one of those kids who just she radiates extreme charisma, and she had it since birth, which is kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's on full display in this movie. And then Speaking of women being the big movie stars, we're doing Iron Mistress as well, streaming, which is from later, it's 1969 with Shirley Shaw. We used to say wuxia movies were flying swordsman movies, and then one of y'all pointed out it's mostly women. It's more the heroes of these movies. So she's yet another one of these ones like Xu Feng and a bunch of others who are battling, stabbing people, flying around, killing people with coins. And then the last one we're showing is Bravest Revenge. So Joseph Kuo from Taiwan, one of the big independent producer-directors there, started out doing wuxia movies. And he did some amazing ones, Swordsman of All Swordsmen, and it's one we're showing. It's a real discovery for this, but it was so popular, the main characters spun off into a couple of sequels. So we're showing Bravest Revenge, which is the middle of there. It's just the same characters, no previous experience with Swordsman of All Swordsmen.
Yes, they're all self-contained stories, so
yeah.
And you don't even have to watch them in the order.
A lot of these films, like this one and others, previous versions of it had really bad dubbing or really bad subtitles. And people, if you read online reviews, they say, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense at all. But we had the privilege of having great subtitles, great translations.
A lot of people think of kung fu movies or wuxia movies or just Asian movies in general as being cheap, or everyone's seen kung fu movies and the dubbing and they're cropped, and our memories of them are seeing them dubbed and cropped for Saturday mornings or on bad bootlegs or on YouTube. And when you actually see them the way they were meant to be presented, with accurate subtitles and translations, with like the widescreen experience or the big screen experience, you actually realize these are significant movies. They are as good as anything coming out of Italy in the 60s, the spaghetti westerns, as good as anything coming out of the US at the time, action movies or whatever. So seeing them in context is what we always try to do. These aren't movies to laugh at, they're movies to laugh with. You have a good time with them, not at their expense. But you only can do that when you see them the way they're meant to be seen.
And the reason we're able to present these new versions of the movies, and we're able to present them, like Grady said, the way they're meant to be seen, is thanks to the efforts of the Taiwan Film and Audiovisual Institute, because they've spent a lot of time and effort restoring a lot of these classic films. And
re-subtitling.
Yeah, re-subtitling as well, creating new English subtitles. So I think this is really a unique opportunity for the audiences to see these little lesser-known Taiwanese wuxia films in the best possible versions of them.